Good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us. This is the Maple Mind podcast. Please remember to subscribe and share. Well, we have a juicy topic for you today. We are going to be talking about Bill C-5, in particular, the Build Canada Indigenous Summit. Now, for those of you that don't have the background on this summit, it was planned last minute. Not all of our First Nation leaders could make it to the summit in time. Agendas were changed last minute, including the ASN Grand Chief Cindy Woodhouse. She had issues the way it was presented, as did all the other leaders. This had to be recorded in secret. They also did not allow the media into this event. So this is another point that's really important for you to know. Not all First Nations were invited to this summit. And for me, there was red flags from the beginning because he should have brought everybody together as an Indigenous community, the Inuit leaders, the Métis leaders, and First Nation leaders. So join us. We look forward to your thoughts. This is going to probably take a couple of shows to get through it, and then we'll do a live at the end of it. I want to acknowledge that Maple Minds podcast broadcasts throughout Turtle Island, and we raise our hands to the ancestors, knowledge keepers of these lands, and that we take responsibility and treat this land with kindness. I and Maple are coming to you from the territory of the Lekwungen-speaking people, the Sanghees, and the Esquimalt nations. And I'm going to pass it off to my brother, who is in Mi'kmaq territory of Unama'ki.
Yes. And if you guys are wondering where Unama'ki is, it is Cape Breton. But Unama'ki encompasses all territory from all of Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, and parts of Quebec. So that's all traditional Mi'kmaq territory that we call Unama'ki. Mi'kmaq, Unama'ki is specific to Cape Breton. So we have names for specific territories too. My name is Calvin Stevens, and we do a Maple podcast here every week and try to keep up to date with First Nation issues.
And I forgot to introduce who I am. I'm Monique May, and I am actually Mi'kmaq Acadian on my mom's side and a mixture of Mi'kmaq, Portuguese, English, Irish on my dad's side. So we're going to jump into it.
So far here, and to get the maximum amount of people who are able to ask questions to the Prime Minister. And we can only do that with your cooperation. As someone who weekly during our Liberal caucus gets a chance to talk to the Prime Minister and gets to ask questions of ministers, I know this can be difficult to do in a brief manner, but out of respect to the people who came here, I ask you to do your best to ensure that we get to hear from as many First Nations as possible. Thank you, Miigwech, Walalia. And first, we're going to go to the floor. I believe the first question, David Morias from Manitoba. If someone can get him a mic, he has a mic. Perfect.
Moria, the chief of the nation, or the sovereign nation, Chicago, also Thomas Crossley. I'm also next to the chief for that. I just want to ask a question.
Sure.
But I wanted to, I got to take you after.
This is the time brought the treaty to him.
Yeah. But listen to what Honey has to say.
From far away, just for time's sake, down the sound. All right, walk it down, please.
See?
What the hell? You
Just
do
so
not speak
disrespectful.
to an elder community leader and a chief like that. No, sir, you do not. He's
Honey.
forgetting his own culture. He's
Yep.
forgetting his own traditions. He's been in Ottawa a little bit too long. See, this is the thing.
Yep.
They all wear their medallions, but they forget in here and they forget in here who they are. A medallion doesn't do that for you. You got to live it. You got to breathe it. It's got to be inside you. And even if you're away from home, living in Ottawa, living in the city, that's no excuse to forget your culture and your traditions and your respect.
Yep.
He has forgotten that.
Jaime,
Shameful. Shameful.
Jaime, please, I would urge you to make an apology and make this right. As Mi'kmaq people, this is not how you were raised.
No, he was not raised like that. And I know that for a fact because I grew up with him.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a little upsetting to hear somebody say, tell an elder
I'm
walk and talk.
so Calvin, do you want to tell us exactly what a medallion is? Because I'm sure a lot of people have that question.
For me, I'm not a politician. I'm not a community leader. So I can't wear a medallion. A medallion represents authority of leadership, of signing authority over certain responsibility. So that's the significance of the medallion. But you have to keep your cultural perspective and identity and the best interest of First Nations, because that's the medallion represents First Nations. So when you wear that medallion, you represent First Nations. So in these last few weeks, Mr. Batiste hasn't been representing First Nations, and therefore that medallion should be taken away from him.
I agree 100%. Let's continue on in this clip.
The treaty. And a lot of the when we don't see bargains. Again, you uphold the treaties. Instead of respect and honor. For the sake of our people that are back home. See them getting overseas. Will they call me part of it? I see one. In fact, it's the first one they called him. Signature names not part of it. You sign one man, you sign a small. So one of them take their name, it's a sign of word, the relationship. And I give you names so you want. And I'll do for a line. I'm not going to give it long. The chief is a bar name, or is the name actually for Section 35 Framework Agreement. I want to do one like telling not only the supportive, but to remind you that the treaties are not just historical documents. They're a living, legal, we must be doing sovereignty. I hope everyone's trying, fast track, to protect Canada's economy and political interests. What protection treaties?
So we just heard the chief talk about, first of all, being disrespected, but that's a separate issue. He's asking Prime Minister after he gave him his treaty to remind him that you already broke it. How do you safeguard moving forward our treaties? And let's listen to Mark Carney's response.
Yeah, wait to hear this.
Modern day treaties. Treaty 5 and more one agreement. Will you like over the same years? It's big operational. Covenant agreements on it. Kind of the same God. So sessions on by.
Thank you for that, Chief Bonias. And we have a question that has a similar theme to that, Prime Minister. Perhaps I can ask you that. It came from Judy Thomas, Chief Counselor of Titicaca First Nation in BC, and it reads, how will your government ensure that Bill C-5 does not override or undermine constitutionally protected and First Nations under Section 35, and that any project deemed to be in the national interest is subject to co-developed criteria and the duty to consult and accommodate?
Well, first off, thank you both for the questions. And let me thank again all the chiefs, Grand Chiefs, the National Grand Chiefs, everyone who's made the effort to be here and they represent the work you do for your peoples today and their descendants. I'm going to bring both questions together, the moderator. And at first, let me start from what we're focused on principally today, then I'll move broader out to the modern treaty question that Chief David asked. With respect to override Section 35 rights, we will never do. This government will never do. That is the low bar, because that is a legal constitutional obligation. It's a legal constitutional obligation of this government. It's a responsibility. I think the test for us and
We're not talking about informed consent.
God.
That's exactly what we're talking about. Prior is an informed consent.
You literally just said we're not breaking treaties, but you literally did by fast tracking the bill that you need.
Ladies, this statement is a lot more.
Alarming?
Yeah, let me break it down.
Please do.
Let me break it down. He says, this government will never break those treaties.
Mhm.
This liberal government, as long as you keep the liberal government, we will honor those treaties. So he's backing First Nations into a corner. We have to keep liberals in power in the hopes that they don't break any more treaties or break any more obligations to First Nations.
Mhm.
Number two, they already set a precedence of making legislation without their legal obligation to consult and get free and informed consent from First Nations. So they've already broken that. So they've already set a precedence and an example, and it just basically opened the floodgates for future governments to do the exact same thing they just did.
Exactly. And with that, Calvin, it brings me back to the whole thing of like where people have been trying to tell me, oh, well, it's better to ask for forgiveness than, ask permission. No, you legally cannot do this. These are treaties. They're funded by international law.
Let me tell you what, Marshy, there is already a legal challenge being made as to the constitutionality of this legislation. They're putting all their ducks in a row. They are possibly filing against this legislation. They're arguing the constitutionality of the legislation was not consistent with their own laws.
But that's what I was saying. You cannot ask for permission or ask for forgiveness when you should be asking permission against an international law. It doesn't work that way. You don't get to work the system the way you want to fit some bill that you want to pass, knowing you have this obligation. You can't do that.
The answer is slush. He really doesn't answer the question. He doesn't explain what prior informed consent is. He just says, oh, we are going to do it. But what is consultation in Carney's eyes? Because what he's calling a consultation in this summit, is not consultation.
And it's supposed to be prior to the legislation being
Exactly.
elected on and passed. So they kind of broke their own laws.
I hate to say this. I think it needs to be said. If it were anyone else, we'd be at that table. All of us would be at that table if it were anybody else.
There is something I wanted to add to that. So Carney is saying, and the Carney government, keep us in power, and hopefully we won't break any more treaties or piss off First Nations. And we'll make you rich. Also, he's number two. He set a precedence for future governments to take advantage of this legislation, because the way the legislation is written is also very alarming. They don't have to consult with us.
Nope.
If they don't want to. Okay.
It's deemed in our interest. Who is the government to tell Indigenous Canadians what's in their interest? This is no different. Like you said, the Indian Act, going back to residential school, take your talk away.
That's the thing. They will get to decide what is in our best interest. He's basically saying, yeah, I know I didn't follow the rules and I passed this legislation illegally. And I know I broke your trust, but you can trust me now.
Right. We're going to do it now. We're going to ask you that. It's okay. I stabbed you in the back once, but I won't do it again.
Yeah. And keep it in power, just so you know.
Yeah.
We are the only ones you can trust.
It is Bill C-5, and we're talking about the Build Canada Act, or whatever you want to call it. As Calvin says, is the big, beautiful bill.
So that with being said, the 50 years we had to wait for most of our reserves to get clean drinking water, you know what that's going to do? It's going to damage our ecosystem all over again. And those water advisories that went away are going to come back again.
Like Jaime said, though, you will be getting millions.
Yeah, and there's actually a clip in regards to water in this summit where a chief finds out at the last minute that King Charles is going to come and talk to her about maybe, protecting watersheds in her area and making it a national park. She's like, that's not your consent. Who says it's in the best interest of us to have a national park?
She was saying it would have been nice if he asked if we wanted that, but that kind of assumed it.
Yeah.
Myself and the ministers here presenting the government as a whole, much bigger members of the government, obviously. The test for us is how do we respect them?
He already failed the
How do we
test.
live up to those responsibilities? What's the level of consultation? How do we work together?
That's my question.
True partnerships are we developing? How much? Is this a new way of building together, building nation on nation, to build our nation?
It's not a partnership. It's a parentalship.
Bingo. I like that terminology, Calvin.
It's a parental unit
Here.
running that song.
When they passed this legislation, they didn't trust us to make the right decisions for the sovereignty and the well-being of Canada.
Yeah.
That's basically what it boils down to. Because we know why this legislation was pushed through so fast. Because the United States is a very real threat.
Yep.
And so they didn't trust First Nations enough to make the right decisions for Canada. Guess what? First Nations would have made the right decisions if you trusted them, because
Absolutely.
First Nations realize that if there is no Canada, there is no
There's no-
treaties and there are no rights. First Nations in Canada would have done anything Mark Carney would have asked if he put his faith in them.
If he brought us
we
to the
put
table
our
like
faith
true partners,
him.
and we did have our faith in him. Blind faith.
Trade faith.
Your nations, your First Nation. And that is the test that we're setting out. That is the process. It begins after this meeting to help define how we're going to do it, and then to help make it very specific around specific projects on which we're working together. We will always respect.
We're working together, Calvin.
He says, after this meeting, this is what we're going to do. This is what we're going to do with consultation after this meeting. Guess what, Mark Carney? Your own legislation says this was supposed to happen before the bill was passed.
We need to respect it and live it and make it real at a higher level and a tangible way, in a tangible way.
This is like, he reminds me of Donald Trump.
Hey,
Does one thing and he says something
That's
else.
another.
I will never get rid of your Medicaid. Never. I'll never touch it. I'll never touch it. And then Medicaid is cut and Social Security is cut. And he's confronted by it. Oh, no, Medicaid. No one's touching Medicaid. That's a lie. That is a lie. No one's touching your Medicaid. This is the Canadian Donald Trump version. But this guy's smart.
like you
Donald Trump's
predicted, the
a
big,
useful idiot.
beautiful bill.
There's a big, beautiful bill. It said, like I said, the one chief already said it centralizes power. Just
It
like
does.
the big, beautiful bill does.
We get built across the whole aspect. So that's the first one. The second goes with respect to modern treaties and the rules of modern treaties, absolutely front and center in this process, without question. You've asked a bigger question, more fundamental question about Section 35 agreement and a broader approach. So not a project specific approach, broader. Our point would be that how we work on these projects is going to help inform and ensure that we get that broader approach that we need. And it's going to be the way. And that's what co-development means. That's what co-working means. And I'll just one other point, because it was part of the question. In and around what we call the conditions. So what's required environmentally? What's required for Indigenous participation in building those projects? What's required for a whole host of conditions that would be related to those projects?
Prior and informed consent.
And that's what the consultation process does. That's how it's put together. And if those conditions are not met, then the designation goes away. Then the benefits goes away if there are benefits from the federal government or the project. And that's how you align the incentives. We collect align the incentive of not just project component.
So he's saying that if First Nations don't agree with these projects, then the federal government will withdraw their funding. How the hell are we supposed to trust him? He told us one thing during the election, and he does another thing after the election. Now he's telling us, don't worry about that. My bad. Trust me now. And he's saying that if we don't agree with those projects, he'll stop it. No, I viewed the projects. Rachel Gilmore did a very good investigative report on which projects exactly that would most likely take place. She was working with another agency that looked at like all the projects that were on Carney's wish list, and they identified some in each sector. So some projects that aren't meaningful, that are wealth oriented, yeah, they probably be signed blind if First Nations don't agree with them. But there are other projects that it doesn't matter what certain First Nations are saying, it's still going to get done. It's still going to happen. First Nations aren't going to be treated the same. Some First Nations are going to be heard, some
Mhm.
First Nations aren't going to be heard, and some First Nations are going to be trampled on. Some First Nations are going to get the golden ticket. Divide and conquer. This whole legislation, this whole strategy just divides people. The government can pick and choose how
And
they treat
Calvin,
First Nations.
we have the provinces and the territories too to consider in this.
Exactly.
And, he's saying that he's trying to pin, and we'll hear that later on in the clips, First Nations against the provinces and the territories. You're right. It's divide and
Yeah.
conquer.
See, the thing that we all had in common in First Nations, because of our because of our rights were recognized under the
Yes.
1982 Constitution, we were the right holders, we were the landlords, we were the partners, we were the owners of this land. They just took all of that away from us. And our First Nation, not only Jaime Batiste, but other First Nation MPs signed on to this legislation, which is also disgusting.
They all signed it.
They all signed it. So when they go home, they have some answering to do too.
Private sector component, as there often will, components, but also the provinces, to speak clear, because the provinces will have obligations of these projects as well. And this is where this federal process, these conditions, this co-development, building up together, can bring real teeth to the partnership.
Thank you, Prime Minister.
Thank you for what?
Question, I'm gonna
What are
continue
we
with
thanking
Terry
him?
He's thanking his master.
Before we hear this clip, I really want to raise my hands, Chief Paul. And I personally want to say that I have taken your words to heart and I will be following your advice.
Well, listen, at the end of the day, we got swindled. We know we got swindled. And you're amazing. You continue to do good work. And I will follow you. Through this, I will stand by you and Calvin, our First Nations, Meiji, and Inuit. We will get through this with the accomplices we've had come and go. But we'll fight this. We got this. Because we know we're stronger in numbers.
Thank you. Thank you for allowing me to speak. Your rep was important. Thank you, Mr. Prime Minister. I'd like to thank Brad. She was in the proxies. Their wise words. I'd like to acknowledge over our 24 years. The wise words that I've heard since time immemorial is my mentor for many, many years, even though it's only a few years old. So first of all, and I know the questions and guide, supposed to guide us, and I need to hear the background of where I come from in order for the government to understand. And I think I speak for a lot of people that have the same experience. When I first became chief, we didn't even have our own potion matters. We were without. We didn't even have our own meeting of our community, which called we are member two. So since that time, I made a vow that as long as I'm chief, my objective is to achieve territorial sovereignty in meat market. 42 years later, I'm still trying. And I'm not saying if that happens. Today, somebody will call me a happy despot. I'll be so happy. So, why do I say? And first of all, I want to acknowledge the territory that we're in. It's a great comfort. It is, on this being said, ancestral grounds.
of the Algonquin and the Anishinaabe. But it's not only the ancestral homes. It's these still today. They are the legitimate owners of the land here and the resources, just like the other indigenous people across this country. The question, Chief, why is that? Why is that? Because we have title. We have treaty. We have title rights. We have treaty rights. That is why we're here. And we need it to be understood that want more than a seat at the table. We need the government to understand that we are the table. If the table is our land and our resources. Also,
Absolutely.
understood that equality that we talk about equality, that we need to be equal to the rainbow. And I believe other nations, indigenous nations in this country, this does not mean that we become like other Canadians.
Well, the thing is, he says there's a process already. There's a process of an economic path. that
Have
was
it in my
made
hand.
by- yeah, there's a process that was made by us, First Nations,
Yep.
that could be utilized by the Canadian government for economic prosperity in Canada. But Canada has still not taken it up. So
Still-
why introduce and pass
Another bill.
Bill C-5 when
Yep.
all they had to do was talk to us?
Yep.
Talk to us and ask us.
The strategic plan and follow it.
This is the thing. And I'm going to say this is going to hurt. And Polly, please don't take offense to it. White men and white women don't want to hear the voices that are square to warn than anything because it falls on deaf ears.
Yeah.
And that's the problem. in the Canadian government.
Do you know how we jumped up to defend people, especially you were part of it, and Calvin, just saying not to tar and feather him, the sins of the father, when they were saying, what's he going to be like? Because his dad ran a day school. And all I could think was, wow, we went to bat for you. And
A lot of Indigenous people went to bat for him.
yeah, I know that.
I should have just given my vote to NDP, even though they weren't in the wing.
Yeah,
We had nowhere to go.
We had Pierre Poilievre or Mark Carney.
Yeah.
We had to
Yeah.
pick the least of two evils. Both of the guys were no good.
Totally.
Let's just be honest. Both of them were no good.
Yeah.
One is going to look out for the billionaires, and
Mhm.
one is going to look out for the United States.
Yeah.
One is going to keep us decently sovereign for another few more years, and
Mhm.
one would have turned us over immediately to the United States. So we just bought ourselves time with the lesser of two
Right.
evils. Let's
Yeah.
be honest.
Would
Yeah,
be the
no,
immigrants.
I
going-
am tired of coddling people's feelings. I was like, trying to save Mark Carney's image. I'm done. I just can't. Unless he gets his shit together and starts acting like an actual leader and giving a shit about people who have been oppressed for years or centuries or millennials, I don't want to hear any more of it.